Good evening. My name is Tom Brooks, and I'm the Vice President for Enrollment and Marketing here at Divine Mercy University. I'd like to welcome you to the webinar. We're going to go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to Divine Mercy University's webinar. DMU is a Catholic institution comprised of two schools. It is dedicated to the scientific study of psychology with a Catholic Christian understanding of the person, marriage, and family. DMU was founded in 1999 as the Institute for Psychological Sciences. In 2014, the Institute launched its MS in Psychology program online with its focus on educating working professionals. In 2015, IPS was renamed Divine Mercy University with the addition of the School of Counseling. Sorry about that. The School of Counseling is an online hybrid, and it's an MS in counseling. What that means is they do most of their work online, and they have a residency once a year where they come into the school for 5 days and work on different things related to the counseling field. Most of it dealing with in-person interviews, those kind of things. IPS, which is the school for psychology, has a Psy.D in clinical psychology. Along the way, you do earn your MS in clinical psychology as well. And then we have a separate online MS in psychology. Divine Mercy University's mission: provide students with an effective academic and educational environment that supports the integration of the psychological sciences and a Catholic Christian understanding of the person. We prepare students to respond to the vocation as mental health professionals. We're located in Sterling, Virginia, and we're about 40 miles from downtown Washington, D.C., about 35 miles from the mountains of West Virginia and wine country in between. So whether you like outdoor sports, hiking, those kind of things, you can do plenty of that in the northwest of us. And if you like history and downtown DC, that's pretty much like I said, go east and you're there. Accreditation and approvals. Divine Mercy itself as a university is institutionally accredited by the SACS-COC, which is the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, and the Commission on Colleges. SACS is recognized as an accrediting agency of colleges and schools by the Department of Education, and DMU voluntarily participated in the accrediting process, and we either met or exceeded all standards in thorough evaluations. As a matter of fact, we just got a 9-year reaccreditation visit from SACS. And normally it's 2, but they'd already extended a year because of COVID. So we got the maximum extension on our credit or accreditation through SACS. We are approved by the state of Virginia through what's called SHEV, the State Council of Higher Education of Virginia, to operate as a school. And the Psyd program has been recognized since 2006 as a national registrar's designation program by the Association of State and Provisional Psychology Boards. The Psyd program has also been accredited by APA, the American Psychological Association, since 2016. Divine Mercy University has been approved to participate in the National Council for State Authorization and Reciprocity Agreements. It's also known as ncsara.org. And that's what kind of provides the rules and how we provide online education across different states. The clinical psychology program is psychology specialty that provides continuing and comprehensive mental and behavioral health care for individuals and families, consultation to agencies and communities, training, education and supervision, and research-based practice. The program structure and clinical experience. It's 122 credit hours, inclusive of both the MP Psy, which is your master's in Psyd, and then the Psyd program itself. It's a 5-year program from beginning to end, and it's based in Sterling, Virginia, here at our campus. It prepares you for licensure as a clinical psychologist. During your first year, you'll be doing coursework that begins the start of your dissertation research. This program being psychology, there's going to be, all of you are going to have different interests, and people will want to work in one area, some will want to work in another. This just allows you to start figuring out those areas that you want to work in and start building a dissertation towards that. Year 2 is your coursework and your externship. Year 3 is, again, more coursework in your externship. And then year 4 at coursework and externship. And then year 5 is your pre-doctoral internship. Defend your dissertation, and there's really no classes. You're pretty much working out in the field. You're on the job, and you're finishing up your dissertation. Some sites include the St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Washington, D.C., the Psychiatric Hospital in Washington, D.C., the VA Medical Center in Martinsburg, Virginia. 85% of students are matched with an APA accredited or APIC member internship site. Data from 2017 and 18. And last year, 11 of the 12 placements were placed in the APA accredited sites. And if you learn anything about placement, that's a pretty high number, and it's a pretty strong number. Is the Psy.D program right for you? Do you want to help people flourish? I always tell people, do you like people? That's probably the first thing you ask yourself. Are you interested in the science behind human behavior? Do you kind of want to know why people do some of the things they do or suffer some of the things that they suffer? Do you want to become an instrument of healing through the psychological sciences? So if you are interested in what they're going through and you want to help them, then that really does bode well for you to do well in this program and in your vocation in life. Are you interested in performing psychological tests and assessments to diagnose your clients and create treatment plans? Are you looking to start a career as a licensed mental health professional, specifically as a clinical psychologist? So those are some questions you want to ask yourself. And, be honest, if you're not, you probably will struggle in this program. But if you pretty much like people, you want to help them, get through the struggles in their life and flourish in life and do it in a way that is not easy. It's some people really do have some things that they need to work through and it may take years to heal. So if these are things you have a calling for that you feel that you can do well, and you'd like to help others, live a life that flourishes and that is of quality, then this is probably something for you to continue to research and look further into. Key areas of competency achieved through the Psy.D program: foundations in psychological sciences and research, integrity in practice, assessment and diagnosis, therapeutic intervention, professional roles, clinical practice from a Catholic integrative perspective. Key areas of competency achieved through the Psy.D program. The first area is foundations in psychological science and research. Graduates will attain foundational psychological sciences, knowledge of biological, cognitive, affective, social, and developmental aspects of the human person, as well as history and systems of psychology, psychological measurement, research design, and statistical methods. Graduates will have the skills necessary to conduct their own psychological research. Second one, integrity in practice. Graduates will be knowledgeable in the areas of diversity and ethics and display critical thinking, self-aware and a reflective practice, and self-care. Graduates will demonstrate responsiveness to supervision, collegiality, and professional comportment in professional practice. The third is the assessment and diagnosis. Graduates will be able to conduct clinical interviewing, perform intake evaluation, demonstrate knowledge in the administration, scoring, and interpretation of psychological assessment, integrate multiple sources of test data and clinical interview information into a written report, diagnose, and develop a treatment plan. During the therapeutic intervention, graduates will be able to demonstrate case conceptualization, treatment planning, building and maintaining the therapeutic relationship, psychotherapy skills, crisis management of urgent and special circumstances, and discharge planning. Professional roles. Graduates will be able to function in a variety of required roles of professional psychologists to include consultant, educator, supervisor, practice manager, and program evaluator. They will be able to work collaboratively within interdisciplinary teams and with clients. Number 6, clinical practice from a Catholic integrative perspective. Graduates will have developed a Catholic understanding of the human flourishing in the individual person and marriage and family life, and be able to integrate this with the psychological sciences and clinical practice. Now, what that means is you're not telling people how to be Catholic. You're trying to help people understand that unlike some schools where you learn how to do a lot of this similar things and come up with a diagnosis, so kind of treating the disease, our integrated model really is meant to help us as professionals understand we're treating people that may have a disease, and you're working with the person to help alleviate whatever issues they may have. So the integrated models literally like stacking a little bit more on top of what you would already learn on the science side, and work more from a holistic, or again, integrated model to help the whole person, not just one area that they may be struggling in. Sample employment tracks. Obviously, licensed clinical psychologist where you can run your own practice. You can be a clinic director, work in a clinic with multiple psychologists and counselors. Psychiatric technician, psychiatric crisis unit interviewer, community mental health social worker, drug abuse social worker, drug and alcohol specialist, certified alcohol drug counselors, therapists, professional psychological resource advisor, psychological behavioral therapist, health project director, group home director. Some of these things do require additional education and certifications or licensure. Note, for the above listed are all for practice at the doctoral level. Different states require different things, so sometimes you may have to seek out either another class or two or a different kind of licensure for your state. Some of our student testimonials. The first picture you see there, James, is in our clinical psychology program. The training is focused on healing the whole person. Kristen says, I was drawn to the Psy.D program out of a desire to serve others in a more profound way than my previous positions offered. Timothy says, the school is not afraid to teach you what it means to be human at every level, psychologically, philosophically, and theologically. That's why I like it. And then Kirsten says, I am so thankful for DMU. The faculty members are very supportive, and I receive a lot of hands-on clinical experience.
Hi, my name is William Johnston, and I'm a Psy.D student at Divine Mercy University, currently approaching the end of my 3rd year in the program. Military service runs in my family, and so both my grandparents served, my parents both served. This door, the Psy.D program at Divine Mercy University, opened that opportunity for me to continue to give back, to conduct research, and hopefully implement a more robust program to treat PTSD as it relates to combat veterans. DMU has certainly provided the integration that I've sought in terms of my formation, both the philosophy and theology core, in addition to the psychology curriculum, has provided me growth in terms of my faith and my role as a husband and father, and of course a psychological clinician. So in essence, the Catholic Christian meta model of the human person is why I'm here, both for my own sake as well as the sake of my future clients.
My name is Viratri von Rome. I'm a fourth-year student from Divine Mercy University, or DMU. And today I'm gonna share with everyone about my experience as a graduate student in psychology. So I would say that my graduate training so far focused on providing both psychotherapy and assessments in order to understand different aspects of mind and body. I especially value my experience of helping individuals overcoming their life challenges from different settings. For example, in psychiatric hospitals or medical centers. Throughout my doctoral training and practical experiences, I have gained a great deal of knowledge, skills, techniques to help patients from diverse cultures. And also as a native Thai clinician, I am able to provide accurate assessment and psychotherapy in working alliance with many different individuals. That is something that I most appreciate from being a student from DMU.
All right. We do have a highlight on our faculty. We're very small class sizes, so our students do enjoy quite a bit of hands-on work from their supervisors, their professors, and their advisors. The nice thing about Divine Mercy University and the Psy.D program is you can talk to your instructors, you can talk to your peers, you can get the help you need in the areas that you need. And a lot of times our professors will make sure they keep tabs on you. And even if you don't ask for assistance, if you're struggling and they notice, they will definitely reach out to you to see what they can do to help out. Some of these instructors that are highlighted here, pay attention to their different areas, because when you go out into the world as, psychologist is your vocation, you may want to specialize in a certain area or have an interest already that, these are the areas that I really want to take my studies and knowledge that I gain and go out and work in the world. Dr. Klawicki is a Psy.D program director, and she specializes in adolescent, adult, and couples therapy. Dr. Diane Graves is the assistant program director. She specializes in child therapy and development and psychological development. Dr. Anna Pecoraro is the associate professor, clinical supervisor, specialized in addictions and trauma treatment. Dr. Phil Scrofani, clinical supervisor, clinical psychology, specializing in cognitive behavioral therapy and group therapy. Dr. Nordling is a clinical supervisor, specialized credentials in child, marriage, and family therapy. As a matter of fact, Dr. Williams Nordling is considered one of the top, 5 in the country in this area. Dr. Paul Vitz is our senior scholar and professor, specializing in integration of Christian theology and psychology. So as you can see, they work in different areas, and then we have other professors, adjunct and folks from other programs that do work providing classes or input into the classes as well. Licensing. Is licensing required? A license to practice is required by each state and or jurisdiction where individuals might practice as a counselor. When licensing process begins after the student completes the practicum and internship and officially graduates from DMU program. States can and often do have additional and differing requirements. If you want to specialize in certain things, sometimes they'll ask for a class or some type of training that may be very specific to that state, or even what you're interested in learning or practicing. It may be relevant to just something needed by that state. Students are responsible for checking state requirements where they plan to work and adhere to them. These typically include the national and state exams. DMU will provide general information related to licensure during the student experience. So pretty much from the beginning, one of the things that's done is they try to help you start figuring out where you want to practice, what area of mental health, and then what state you're part of, and then making sure that you do the research, ask the questions, and do the things that you need to do with your advisor and a program director and assistant director to figure out what your requirements really will be. And as you map out your path, you're able to, spend the next several years under the program, making sure that you keep working the right way towards that. Who initiates licensing? Licensing is a student-driven process. It is important for the student to begin research of licensing requirements in the state he or she intends to work in as early in the program as possible. We pretty much know what every state requires. So a lot of what we're saying, your research, you're not out there on your own trying to figure it all out. You do need to check with your advisor and your program director, and they will help you understand how to get started. And again, a lot of it comes back to what you're going to want to practice, or what you want in a practice. So if it's family and marriage, if it's drug and alcohol, if it's adolescence, the list is pretty big. And again, some states require that you have very specific training in certain areas that may go beyond what you learn during your program with us. So that's why it's important for you to start figuring this stuff out pretty early. Will students be fully licensed after graduation? No. Graduates must work approximately 1 year in a supervised clinical environment, in addition to other state requirements to be licensed. So after you complete your education, you'll do your 1 year supervision, and then you'll be able to go for licensure. The graduate may be required to obtain a provisional license for this year period. You can check for your state requirements. The lifelong impact of investing in your education. I'm not going to go through all of this, but basically we kind of think in terms of something tangible like a car. When you get it, as soon as you drive it off the lot, you've heard the story, you start losing, value on it. Now, if you keep it for 50 years and turn it around and sell as a collectible, maybe you get your money back, but for the most part, you lose your money on something like that. Conversely, in education, not only in what you learn during the Psy.D program, what you've already learned in your undergraduate program, some of you may already have a master's. This is training and education you take with you for the rest of your life. You'll be able to use this in your daily life, not only your practice, but in your personal life. And, you may find yourself having different kind of conversations and different, ways of interacting with people that you may have done so differently in the past. And you find that there's a lot of tools in what you learn to not only help you in your practice, but help you in your life. So what does it cost to go to DMU? And for the most part, if you price out our program to others, we're pretty close to everybody else. We have a pretty strong scholarship program, which helps reduce that, but I'll go through that in a little bit. It's $1,095 per credit. Again, the program's 122 credits. So your credit direct expense is $133,590. This does not include fees and indirect expenses. Indirect expenses are your living expenses. So if you want to live extravagantly, you can go out and find that $2,000 a month apartment, live by yourself, and do with all that. Most of our Psy.D students tend to find renting rooms and things like that, where they bunk up with some of their peers, and the upperclassmen tend to help out with that as well. They can help people understand the best and cheapest ways to live, if you will, in our local area. We used to be right outside of DC. Now we're so far away that whether you're in an apartment with 2 or 3 other people, a house where you find a situation that people are looking to rent a room or rent a something over the garage, there's always options for you to look for, and we do have help on campus for that as well. So to fund your education, there's a couple different options. One is federal aid. For those who qualify, you'll go for the William D. Ford Federal Direct Student Loan Program, including unsubsidized Stafford loans and Graduate Plus loans. The financial aid department will work with each student on an individual basis to help work through that. There's also assistantships and federal work study programs at Divine Mercy University, especially for the Psy.D students. And then there's alternative financing. Some of you may have already done this through your undergraduate education. Cash plans. I mean, you may have a family or yourself that have set up money for education, so you just pay your program as you go. Private funding, agencies and organizations, they do matching funds, possible grant programs, support groups, diocesan or parish investment. We have a number of students that are supported by their parish and or diocese. And then we are approved for veterans funding. So we do take pretty much all the GI Bill type work. Veteran work study and those kind of things. So making graduate school affordable. First, we've missed the early admission scholarship deadline. So that one's gone actually, but we do have the Newman Scholarship, Faith and Hope, Patriot, Public Servant Scholarship, International Student Scholarship for those international students, diversity scholarships. We have matching scholarships. So if you work at a parish and they want to, say put $2,000 towards your education, we'll double it. The grant and aid scholarship is up to $3,500, and those are when students run into hard times, something happens, and they need something to kind of bridge them. They're not guaranteed, but we do look at them. 5 years is a lot of things can happen, and we want to make sure our students are taken care of. There is a Psy.D scholarship that you can earn up to 50%. And right now, those of you that are on this, if your application is in by the end of the month, you can interview in January and you can compete for that 50%. So it's not too late to compete for the 50% scholarship. There is a Psy.D transfer scholarship for those coming out of other programs or masters. The St. Martin de Porres Scholarship, and then Christendom Scholarship for those that may be going to Christendom. We have a couple more as well that are not listed on here. Best way to figure it out is go to divinemercy.edu financial aid, and you'll find these scholarships. Let's see. We have Regina Lester raised hand. Okay, Regina, what do you want to know? I think you got to type the question. So we have to type it in chat. All right, we'll go to the next slide and we'll answer questions at the end. How's that? Let's see here. All right, so it's a very good question, Angela. Good evening. May I ask how the Catholic Christian model is integrated into the coursework and other teaching activities at DMU's Psy.D program? Are students taught how to use this model in designing treatment plans? Thank you very much for this webinar. So, one thing about our program that's different than many others is every course is built from the ground up. And, that's not unusual, but many universities rely on, kind of the instructor to put together their course plan for, whatever courses they're teaching. The methodology at Divine Mercy is that we build all courses from the ground up. We use a course content development teams that, encompass subject matter experts in the field of psychology, of course, and then subject matter experts dealing specifically with whatever that course is itself. So there may be one on morality. So you're going to have a philosopher, you're going to have some other folks in there as well. And then we have theologians that work throughout all of the courses. So we build the integrated model into each program. And again, it's basically taking similar science you're going to get at maybe a James Madison, a Wake Forest, a Duke, or somebody like that. But then when we build these courses, we build the integrated model into that every course so that it kind of weaves itself through the program. And it's really, again, from a teaching methodology, it's really, if you think in terms of teaching from a human dignity perspective, that's really what we add to the science part, if you will. So we do add the science of the integrated model into it. And again, that's taught through every course as it relates to that course, and again, built from the ground up by the course content team. And then every instructor is actually that teaches these courses, they obviously have some input into it, but they go through some training of their own to understand the coursework that's being built and how to then relay the important parts of that to their respective students. So hopefully that answered that question. Let's see. All right. We have Isaiah Lamb, who's also on here, and he'll join in a minute. He is currently a second year student. He's also part of the student leadership group, and we asked Isaiah to come on because Isaiah, again, as a second year, has a pretty good understanding of what new students are going through. And then, he can also tell you what he's looking forward to, his experience, and how all that's worked out for him so far. All right, we'll get to that in a second. All right, entrance requirements. The baccalaureate degree from a regionally accredited or internationally recognized school, undergrad degree in psychology is preferred, but many of our students do not actually have an undergraduate in psychology or counseling. If you're admitted without an undergraduate degree in psychology, you'll be required to complete a prerequisite courses during the first year of your program. And that's just to familiarize you with a lot of things such as terminology, the understanding of psychology, those kind of things. You need to bring in a minimum GPA of 3.0 on a 4.0 scale on your undergraduate side. And applicants with a cumulative GPA of less than 3.0 may be considered for admission on a case-by-case basis. Again, part of the application process, complete the online application. There's two parts to it, part A, part B. You definitely want to get the first part done as soon as possible. And then the other parts of it, you'll work through with your admissions advisor. It's not terribly difficult to get through all the application. I think the biggest thing is we have recommendation requirements. So when you choose your recommender, those that would send in recommendations on your behalf, make sure you have a good conversation with them and they understand what you're doing and timelines and those kind of things. The next one is our financial aid office will begin working with you upon receipt of the application. They'll help you understand how to fund your education, what's available to you, and go through the scholarship piece as well. And if you're a cash pay student, they'll make sure that you are introduced to the business office, who will then work through that portion of it with you as well. So between financial aid, helping you understand everything from loans, grants, scholarships, and then student assistantships, and then connecting you with the business office if you're going straight cash, you should be able to understand how to fund your education. And one thing that I'll tell you that I do worry about with new students, sometimes when they're trying to figure out their living expenses, they don't always really account for all the different things that they need to really pay attention to. Eating ramen and peanut butter every day is probably a wonderful thing when you're young, but is that something you really want to do? You also have a good group of students. There's, our students are pretty strong, our Psy.D students. And I think they do a fair job of working, with underclassmen and, can answer questions, good and bad. Every cohort, every class experiences different things. And sometimes everything doesn't go as smoothly as it should. So, I think one of the big things is, if there's ever a mistake, we work through any of the mistakes and we try to make sure. But ask questions, especially on the living expenses, and make sure that you're covering your bases there, so you have a comfortable time while you're also going through your studies. Consistent communication is maintained with your admissions advisor and financial aid and the business office. And then you'll move into orientation, registration, all that. So you'll be working with student success and the registrar's office as well. And you'll be asked to do certain things, especially with orientation. Please make sure you're communicating back and forth with the offices that are working with you. During the application process, once all documents are submitted, competitive applicants are invited to interview on site. Not every applicant's invited to the interview. It doesn't happen often, but for the most part, if you're not invited, it's because, there was some kind of gap in your admissions requirements that you didn't meet. And that's something that maybe we were trying to put in as an exception. Sometimes it happens. Some people also pull out their applications because they've decided this is actually not something they want to do after they've done more research. So not everybody interviews, but for the most part, those that are interested, meet the requirements, they usually have no problem interviewing. All applicants will hear back from an admission decision by mid-February for this group. And then the program begins on site in August of 2022. Normally, we do wait till February, but what we have done, we've already had one group interview and we've selected a number of students. They've been notified that they've been offered admission. We're going to do the same thing with this group for what we call the December group. If they interview, or if they apply during the month of December, get into the January interview, they're able to compete for the 50% scholarship and all that. We're moving up our date to notify them as well. We're trying to get everybody notified earlier this year than we've been doing in the past, so you can make decisions yourself for how you want to move forward, whether it's with our program or another program, and it helps us understand who may not be coming, and of course those that are coming. Okay, next slide. How to complete your application package. Again, go online. Part 1, inclusive of $55 application fee. And then part 2 is going to be your essays and resume. You have 3 recommendations, at least 2 of which must be academic in nature. official transcripts from all post-secondary institutions, and then your official GRE test scores, and then our code for us to be able to receive them is 5639, and you have to have it within the past 5 years. So if you've already taken it, you can submit that. If you feel that you want to try to improve the score, you can do that, but I would tell you to move rather quickly on it. Information for international applicants. Can I ask, is there anybody on here who is an international student? If you are, just do what's called raise your hand. If there is none, then I'm going to go ahead and bypass this piece. Okay, so we do have a student that's an international student. For international applicants and applicants whose baccalaureate degree was earned at an institution outside of the U.S., please note the following. You must submit any international transcripts to a NACES approved evaluation service such as west.org or www.edperspective.org for a course-by-course evaluation of the transcripts. Applicants holding degrees from outside the United States must demonstrate post-secondary education that is at minimum equivalent to a U.S. bachelor's degree. If the credential is not in English, the credential must be translated to English. Cost for this evaluation will be the responsibility of the student, and then applicants whose primary language is not English may need to take the TOEFL or IELTS test. So the easy button is you have to take your transcripts that are not in English, have them converted to English. Then they do what's called a course-by-course evaluation to make sure that whatever education you earned outside of the U.S., that your degree is the equivalent of a bachelor's degree in order to be able to apply. And again, if English is not your first language, then you would need to take the TOEFL or the IELTS test. All right, so application deadlines. The second interview date for applications should be received by no later than the end of this month, December 31st. I'm asking everybody that's interested in competing for the 50% scholarship, get your application in part one as soon as possible. Again, this is a two-part process. So getting part one in tells us you're interested and you're getting to work on the second part, but it also kind of, lets us know who to start working with you. Financial aid will be one of the first ones to reach out to you, your admissions advisor, and then, the other departments as you move through your application process. We do have one other period after this, the January 14th interview, and the last interview for DMU's Psy.D applicants would be March 4th, and the last application is February 18th. That group will not be competing for the 50% scholarship. We do have 25% scholarships and tons of other scholarships they can compete for. And again, student assistantships. And to give you an idea of student assistantships, let's say you go and you earn 20% in scholarships and you want to be a student assistant. Student assistants are given an hourly wage that also reduces their tuitions. They can work 10 hours a week or 140 hours a semester. So you can take pretty close to $20-some thousand off of your education if you use your student assistantship hours throughout the life of your program. So there are other ways to cut your costs, and that student assistantships are one of them. All right. So first, I want to thank you. Second, is we're now at the Q&A portion of this, and I'll open up that piece. For those of you who may have questions, please ask them. Second, we do have Isaiah, a current student and also part of the student government, on with us. So if you want to talk to him about his experiences, what he's learned, maybe some suggestions from him, please, ask your questions and we'll go from there.
Great. Thanks for having me, Tom. Maybe as we wait for a few questions, I could just introduce myself quickly and talk a bit about maybe my journey to DMU. So as Tom said, my name is Isaiah. I'm originally from South Dakota, went to school in Nebraska, and throughout my college journey, I did a lot of different things. I studied in the seminary. I built pipe organs for a little bit. And then I actually did work with the homeless in Denver, Colorado. And so while all those things kind of seem like random events, they all kind of played into my desire to become a psychologist. I think just learning the theology and the philosophy of humans in seminary really inspired in me this love for the person. I studied psychology in undergrad, and then obviously during my time in street ministry, it seemed like all those things came together, right? Where you're encountering the homeless every day and seeing mental illness, seeing addiction. And for me, that really solidified my desire to spend, the rest of my life working with people who are going through all sorts of suffering and trials. And DMU fit everything that I had gone through perfectly. Just that focus on the human person, the Catholic philosophy and theology that really just is a foundation. And then just the deep dive into the science of psychology and how do we put all of these things into practice? How do we take that idea of a human person being fully good and implement that into our psychological practice? So it's been a great experience so far. I think it's been very fulfilling, not without its challenges, as any good thing is, but it's really solidified in me a desire to learn more and to serve those who are in need. So that's just a bit about me. Certainly feel free to ask any questions. I love to answer even the most detailed question that might not even seem important. I'm happy to do that. Okay, I see here. Okay, anything about churches nearby DMU that provide daily mass? So DMU itself does actually provide daily mass. It's right around the lunch hour between classes. So that is offered every day. A lot of students live pretty close to the school. So there are actually a lot of parishes around. The Diocese of Arlington is very strong in that way. And so a lot of people, there's a couple parishes very close. So if students don't go to DMU, they'll just go down the road to a nearby church. So there's no shortage of churches around here. I will say that.
So before we answer Michael's question, we do have.
Is this about the classes for clinical psychology? If you've taken all of the written classes, with the exception of practicum and internship, transferring classes. I can say a little bit, and then Tom, obviously, feel free to hop in here. There are some classes that do transfer, but there's a limit as to what those are and how many credits can transfer in. Because DMU has such a unique philosophy and approach to psychology, a lot of the stuff that you learn kind of has to be done in-house. And so while there certainly are credits that can be accepted, that's kind of on a case-by-case basis. At least that's my understanding of it.
You're correct. There's a couple of different avenues. First, there's obviously directly transferring in credits. That's one. Two, and there is a limit on those. And then two, you can audit courses. So what that means is you can take the course, maybe you've taken something similar. This way you audit it. As long as you pass the exams and stuff, then you turn around and you get credit for it and you pay less to audit the course. That's usually because you've taken something similar to it in nature. But again, because we develop our courses from the ground up, it's kind of hard to replicate all the content you're going to get in our programs. So those are our options, and those are something you would go through with your advisor to understand. If the question, and I'm not sure I understood the question, so I apologize, but if the question is, while at DMU, you do all these things, but your internship and practicum, can that transfer out? Every institution is different. Most are going to limit what you can transfer in, but that's something you'd have to check with those institutions on. It's not something relevant to what DMU would do with them.
A couple more here about the experience of DMU. What has been the most challenging aspect of the program for me, and how am I overcoming it? I think in some ways, the second year is kind of considered to be the most difficult because you have a lot of things coming at you. Firstly, you have the program is pretty academic heavy at the beginning. So you have a full course load. And then in your second year, you start staffing the clinic that's at the university. So you throw that responsibility on top. And then you're actually starting to do some dissertation work as well. So the second year is just the perfect storm of all those things. And it's not that any of them are, overwhelmingly hard in and of themselves, but it's just managing all of them together. So I would say certainly that this year, that's been my challenge. And one way that I've overcome it, and it's been incredibly helpful for me, is just really finding a routine and finding discipline in the way I'm kind of living life, like just getting up at the same time, making myself a good breakfast, and setting aside time for studying. And that has made all the difference. I mean, it's something you even learn in psychology, just those natural things like getting good sleep and taking care of your body, like go so far. So for me, actually learning to take care of myself and to value my time has really helped me overcome so much of what I've had to face in the program. Couple questions here about, so one is about community life. What is community life like in terms of fellow students or the young adult Catholic community? And there's also another question about the biggest challenge for me the first year. And I'll answer these together because they kind of coincide for me. I moved here in the middle of the pandemic, so August of 2020, which was quite a difficult transition, especially away from the community of homeless ministry that I had done. And so what made it very difficult was the trouble finding Catholic community, because everything was shut down, like events weren't really happening. And in some ways that really made everything a lot harder. When the mask mandate kind of ended and things loosened up in the spring, I found that the Catholic community clicked. It happened so fast. All of a sudden, I had met so many people in such a short amount of time, and I was just like, where was this the whole time? And that was really when I started noticing things shifting for me. That things got so much better, and that there are so many Catholic events, young adult events around that really brought me life, brought a lot of opportunity to meet others. And in some way that happened at DMU too, because DMU had COVID restrictions, and that kept people kind of apart and virtual at some moments. So once things shifted back to in person, you could just feel the difference. And it's been cool to watch people support each other through different cohorts, through the different challenges that we all face at different times. It's been really neat to see that happen at DMU, but also in the community as a whole, the Catholic community.
You know what? Let's two-part this one.
Sure.
First and foremost, let me make sure you all understand that we're not teaching anybody how to be Catholic. We're not teaching people to become Catholic. We're teaching, mental health through counseling and or Psy.D related processes. But within that, in what we call our integrated model, we do teach about the human dignity of the person. We do teach, that there's disease and then there's the person. And the integrated model is really about treating the whole person. So if you think holistically versus a specific psychosis or a specific, mental disease or something like that, instead of just treating that, you're treating the whole person. So it's, you're definitely not sitting around reading a bunch of Catholic texts. That's not happening. What you're doing is you're understanding how the integrated model or the dignity of the human person is involved in the treatment and overall work we do with all of our clients. Now, that being said, I'll let Isaiah throw the student perspective in there and what he's experienced, and maybe that'll help finish off my portion.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, Tom. And I guess maybe for those that didn't hear the question, the question is about a program fitting for someone who is maybe religious, but not Christian specifically. And I think a lot of what Tom said is true there, that I know several people. I have some in my cohort that are not Catholic or not even Christian. And they talk a lot about what they saw in DMU was that vision of the human person. Yes, it's based in Catholic thought and philosophy, but the beautiful thing about philosophy is that it's aimed at truth. Like, it's aimed at finding the objective truth in things. And so while there might be examination of Catholic texts here and there, it's trying to pull out what is the truth about a human person here, right? So we can find that a person is spiritual. In some ways, we can find that they're a body and a soul. That's an important piece, whether or not a person recognizes that. They have emotions. They need to be with other people. Being interpersonally related is super important. So I think exactly like Tom said, the aim is the human person and the psychology, but the foundation is kind of this Catholic thought. And it's important to actually, at some points, to even question that, push back, and so you can get a full understanding of what is going on with the people in front of you. And that certainly does not require being Catholic in any sense. And in some ways, it's added a lot of richness to this discussion, hearing people from other perspectives on the topic of humans. So,
okay. One area that we don't spend a lot of time on during these conversations, and I actually got hit by several folks later on the last one, so I'll elaborate a little bit now. Outside of classwork, I briefly mentioned at the beginning of the slide that, we're situated in Northern Virginia, right outside of Dulles Airport. Basically, we're 5 minutes away. And, DC, downtown DC is about, an hour or so from us. Mm-hmm. And then Northern Virginia wine country is about 30 minutes. Harpers Ferry, West Virginia is about 50 minutes. You got the Potomac and Shenandoah rivers right there. You have hiking, you have the Appalachian Trail, you have just tons of outdoors activities, camping. Within 2 hours, you're pretty much in Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, and DC. So you can be in the ocean in the morning, in the mountains in the evening if you want to put in the drive. So there's a lot of outdoor activities. There's a lot of culture. There's a lot of museums, early American history from how we were established as a country, and all those important documents sit in several museums over in DC. But, there's what we call history alive in this market. You can go all kinds of different areas around here and just see some famous battle thing, or, this or that. You got Gettysburg. I mean, you name it, history is here. And, you're also in the nation's capital, and all that entails. If you're into politics, if you're into psychology, you have a whole incubator of opportunities to study over in DC is the best way I'll put it. I'm not anti-politics. I'm just telling you, it's a little crazy these days. So there are tons of things to do. Isaiah, maybe you can help them understand kind of how the student leadership works, and then how, your peers come together and do different things.
Maybe just like one comment I'll make on what you just said. And maybe it's because I'm from South Dakota and we don't have much to do there to begin with. But I will say, being out here, the amount of opportunity is unbelievable. I mean, you can find anything you want to do. I was literally camping on the Appalachian Trail last week, found a nice little cabin that you could do. And so it's just like, if you can dream of it, you can do it. And that's been a really cool part of being out here. As far as my role with the Student Leadership Committee, that's an organization of students that come together, and we plan events for the academic and professional development of students. So we'll put on events here and there, workshops for resumes. We provide treats during like finals week, and just trying to foster a sense of community while we're together at the school, which it's been really rewarding to see see the ways that we can meet the needs of the students professionally and academically, but also foster a community of professionals who are growing together and will be calling on each other as colleagues later down the road. Outside of maybe the school setting, it's been really neat to see people kind of banding together and going to different events here and there. I know a lot of people will go on camping trips every year over a fall break or something like that. Just various get-togethers throughout the year. It's really nice to see the ways that people can take their interests and really bond over those, and foster that sense of community even outside of classes and clinic work. So there's definitely a lot happening there.
Okay. There's a couple of questions here for you. I think maybe these would be good for you.
Great. Yeah. Okay. First question. How are students prepared to start their dissertation work in their first year? I will say I'm very grateful for the way that this is set up. You're not immediately thrown into it. Your first year, you're taking a psychometrics, your first semester, you're taking a psychometrics, psychological measurement class, and just starting to get a sense of research and what research looks like in psychology. The professor there who teaches all the research classes is very good at giving you the big picture from the beginning. So she will start to talk about dissertation work, but it's in a way where you don't have to like find a topic right away. Your second semester is it's called Integrative Dissertation Seminar, and it's immensely helpful. It's an opportunity to pick 3 topics that you think you may want to do a dissertation on, and then you dig a little bit into the research on each of those to start to see if there's enough there for you really to have a project to work with. And so that class is just, again, like immensely helpful for starting the process of thinking, trying things, and just starting to dip your toe in the water. Okay, I could go on to the second year. You asked specifically about the first year. So all I would say about that is it's a very gradual and helpful process to get into it. And I've been very grateful for that. Kind of the second question there, how are students supervised during their internships? So it kind of depends as you go along. So the process is in your second year, you're doing externship at the clinic, at the university, the in-house clinic. Your third and fourth year, you're doing what are called externships in sites around the DC area. And then your fifth year, you're doing an internship, and that's kind of a placement. I'm sure Tom talked about that earlier. Throughout the United States, you apply to different sites. And honestly, supervision depends on each of those sites. While you're at the IPS Center Clinic, sessions are like recorded, especially if you're doing telehealth, but we also have cameras on the walls where the supervisors will sometimes be in session with you, but most of the time you're just recording your sessions and they're able to watch and give you feedback. As you get further into the process, there's not so much of recording. It's just you meet with a supervisor weekly to talk about what's going on with your clients, and they can kind of guide you through ways to approach and help out with whatever your client needs. And as you get into internship, you get a lot more freedom as you go forward. But again, it kind of depends on the supervisor and the way they like to do things. And then maybe this third part, Tom, you might have more insight to this. How often does DMU hold admissions for new students each year?
So in the Psy.D program, we have 3 cycles, if you will. The first one's passed. We're in the middle of the second one, and then we have the final one in March. And these are basically group interviews. We only have one start a year, and that's in the fall. So all of this is to build up for the fall, and we're only going to have up to 20 students in our cohorts. This past year, we had a very small cohort, and it was what we call COVID impacted. A lot of the undergraduate schools struggled last year, and it was a tough year for students to make up their mind. I don't think we have the same issues we had before, and we're seeing a lot more applications this year, a lot more interest. We have people coming from all over, not only the U.S. but outside of the country, and we've probably seen more new applicants come from schools that we've never had applicants come from in the past. And that's all over the United States right now. So I think this group, the early group, that's always the ones they always knew they were coming here. They were waiting for their senior year. They were already ready to go. This group here in particular, I think normally is the ones that are trying to discern where they're going to go. They may have multiple options. But what I will tell you is based on cost at any school, any program, you really want to get your applications in now so that you don't, have to compete with the last group because it's going to be a larger group. And 2, this one's still competing for the 50% scholarships. So there's that reason. And again, this cohort will not be a large group of people interviewing. So it's kind of nice. And the interview process, when you come in for the group interview, you don't just sit there in front of a bunch of instructors and they're just blasting you with questions. It's a really interactive process, and it's done with other students, and it's more of a conversational piece. Excuse me. Maybe that hopefully answers that. And then I see there's another couple questions.
Oh, yeah. Okay. What about coursework? Is coursework back to back, or do you have classes spread out throughout the day? This is a good point for a lot of people, especially when I give tours around the school. I like to bring this up, that the schedule at DMU is pretty different from what I think a lot of people have in undergrad, at least what I had in undergrad, where you have, if you have a 3-credit class, you have it 3 times a week, usually for 50 minutes each. At DMU, the class schedule is, if you have a 3-credit hour class, you have class for 3 hours once a week. So you have class basically once a week. Most of the time you only have 1 class per day, but there are, as you get, especially your second year, there are a couple days where you do have 2 classes in a day. So you'll have a 3-hour block in the morning, or sometimes a 4-hour block, depending on the class. You'll have an hour break in between, and then you'll have another class in the evening. And certainly I will be the first to admit that takes some adjustment, especially if your undergrad didn't have that. But it is a lot more conducive to learning the material. You can kind of just stay in it and really dig deep. So sometimes, I guess to maybe be more specific about your question, sometimes you have back-to-back classes. Other times they're kind of spread out. I will say every semester there is a day off, right? So like this semester I had Wednesdays off. I had to do some stuff with the clinic on Wednesdays, but as far as class went, I didn't have any class on Wednesdays. And next semester it'll be Friday. So there are days with more intense work, but there's also some days with less pressure there. So.
Okay. Well, Isaiah, I appreciate it. I appreciate your time as always and your insights. Any other questions out there before we end this? And hopefully we'll see some of you putting in your applications pretty quickly here, but any other questions?
Oh, one more question.
People thinking.
Well, one more. Does full time mean 4 3-credit classes? Oh gosh, I actually don't know the technicalities of that.
I can help out since I have the registrar's office too.
Great.
Your classes are set up. First of all, Divine Mercy goes in terms. We have 2 terms per semester. Some terms you'll have one class, some terms you'll have 2, some you'll have 2 and 2. The credits are what they are, 122, but every class is not 3, 4. What there's different classes. There's 1 credit class. There's so you do have different credits based on labs, regular coursework and all that kind of stuff. So at the graduate level, think less about 3 and 4 credits and just think about classes and the number of classes you have and, when they are and those kind of things. So that's really the easy way to think about it. But we're based on semesters with 2 terms per semester.
That's a good way to put it because it's just full time. Like that's kind of what you're doing is just every day. It's something with school. So that is a much better way to think about it.
In the summer session, you only have 1 term. So that's why I mentioned terms, because if the question some folks may be asking, you're asking about full-time versus part-time. We really don't have many part-timers. Everybody's pretty much full-time in this program.
Yeah.
But don't think in terms of 18 or 20 or 10 or whatever. It's really relevant to the semester and then the 2 terms within the semester. All right. Hopefully that answered that question. Thank you, everybody. And I look forward to seeing some of you apply. And if any of you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call us and or send an email, and we'll be more than happy to reach out and talk to you. Thank you all.
Great. Thanks.